and welcome to this fortnight's Reset Show. As you'll see, slight change in face at the front end of the Reset Show today. Unfortunately, our lovely Emma is under the weather again, not long after COVID, poor thing. She is on the call, but she isn't feeling herself. So she's going to stay off camera and I'm going to help B host the show today. So we've got a very exciting chat today with Tom Nagy from Crown Worldwide Group, and you may recognise Sam Knowles, who has been on the show before from Insight Agents. They'll be talking about the role of purpose and how to unearth, embed and evaluate its impact. So lots to look forward to on the show. So before we get started, for those of you who may have never come across the Reset Show before, the Reset Show was originally born right at the beginning of the pandemic when we wanted to seize the opportunity that it presented us to do things differently. So over the course of the last year to 18 months, we've had some fantastic guests join the show, sharing their experiences and things that we can really learn to help us as we move forward in this new or different way of working. We are going to be doing things slightly differently after today's show ends. So if you are a regular, you'll know that we do the show on a fortnightly basis. It's usually on a Wednesday at this time. Going forward, we're going to be a little bit more flexible just to give us the opportunity to hear from some different guests who aren't restricted to a specific time slot. So if you're already signed up to receive all our notifications, we'll keep you informed about who we've got coming on the show and when. So if you'd still like to join, you can do so. But as so many of you now get the shows from my emails afterwards, you'll still be kept up to date with all the great conversation. So I'm going to hand you over now to Belinda to introduce our guests properly and get the conversation going.
Thanks, Katie. Katie, you're a total pro, stepping in at the last minute. That was so slick. So thank you so much. And Emma, get well soon. So as Katie said, we've got Tom and Sam on the call. And I have had the joy of working with these two over the last 18 months to 2 years on this really fascinating project where we helped Crown Worldwide Group to unearth, and we'll look at this language in a minute, to unearth its purpose, and then to think about actually how do we make this meaningful? How do we actually bring this to life? How do we embed it? And what does that look like when that's done? Is it done? Lots of interesting questions there. So that's what we're going to be exploring, as Katie said. I'm so excited that these, we are the back of a brilliant award win for the team at Crown Worldwide Group last night from the Business Culture Awards, scooping the award for leading with purpose for business culture. So that's literally less than 12 hours ago, I expect, that they picked up that award. So it's super exciting to explore that. And also that's not the only accolade that this program or this piece of work has won. The guys also scooped 3 internal communications and engagement awards, plus the Grand Prix award at that award ceremony. And really what I think is so interesting is, for me as a consultant or as somebody working in an agency side, is that what this program for me does is it really ties the bow on a piece of work. And what I mean by that is it didn't just do the work and then go, great, yes, done, isn't that fantastic? It's the pure evaluation piece at the end of it that can actually start to measure the impact of this piece of work. And that is such a gift, because usually as consultants we step away or have to step away towards the end and wish people well, but Tom has done just the most fabulous piece of work to incorporate that. So let me introduce Tom in a little bit more detail. And I know I do a hash job with this, Tom, do fill in the gaps. So Tom Nagy is head of insights at the global logistics business, Crown Worldwide Group. Now, Crown is an enormous organisation, 5 businesses, 50 countries, 2 years, unbelievably, 20 years experience of agency and client side, customer and market research. And that's for organisations including Unilever, Tesco, Dunnhumby, and so on. Sam, who Katie said, has already been on the show with us, so many of you will be familiar with him. Sam is founder and MD of Insight Agents. Insight Agents are storytellers, in particular data storytellers. Sam is also the author of, I'm going to say 2 books, but it might be 2.5 or 3 by the time we're speaking. So I'm sure we'll drop into the show notes and the chat today some details on some of those fabulous books as well. So Tom, anything about you that I haven't said that people really do need to know?
I think you've covered it. I think you've also there might be some people out there that might be wondering how I'm feeling today after another win for our business and Inside Agents and Fathom XP last night. So yeah, hopefully I'll do my best today to make sure I answer your questions and have a good discussion properly. But I am feeling a little bit partied out.
That's why you're doing in a shady room, not too much bright light. So thank you for joining us. And congrats. Sam, what haven't I said?
Well, I wish it was 2.5. My essay deadline for book 3 is the 31st of January next year, but I do have the end of this month, the whole week of no client work and focused writing, but I'm very ready to write the third in the Using Data Smarter trilogy of books, but we will talk more about that next year, I have no doubt.
Fabulous. Yeah, great books. Do check them out. As I say, we'll put them in the show notes. So let's start the conversation. Katie, give me a thumbs down if my audio is really bad. I've just got a big truck going past, or a thumbs up if it's okay. It's okay.
It's a bit off and on, so we'll see how we go. Worst case scenario, we can always turn your video off and see if that helps with anything. And
okay, great.
I will questions
watch
through chat if needs be as well. So.
Excellent.
Okay.
I will watch for your visual cues, and if I need to switch my video off, I will. So great. Into the conversation. So the language we talk about and how we've introduced this program is discovering or unearthing purpose. And it's a very particular choice of language. Sam, can you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think whether a company was founded in 1965, I think I'm right in remembering that, Tom, for Crown, or whether it's kind of 65 days or 65 weeks old. The purpose, the reason that the founders created it, and that those that lead and serve and help to keep it distinctive in the very moment. The purpose is there, but it often remains hidden in plain sight. And I think that it's very important to, I mean, you mentioned that I'm interested in data, I mean, all sorts of data. I think it's in order to get towards a purpose, it needs surfacing. It's a bit like, the old oil analogy, you need to zone in the right area and then mine and extract and ultimately to refine that. I mean, I think there's a lot of talk about purpose, and I think there's a lot of cynicism about purpose, and I think I was at one stage thinking about writing a book about it. I'm not at the moment, but I was thinking about doing it, and it would have been called something like, "It's not about saving the planet; it's much more important than that." The purposes that businesses can have and can express don't need to be just about ESG. Often they are. There is an ESG component in them, but it's about what is it that motivates the individuals that founded, that lead, that serve, that throughout the organization. What is it that joins them together? What is the reason that they're there and that they exist? And one thing it definitely isn't, and Simon Sinek, who's been in this area for many years, would say is profit. It's not about making money. Making money is not a decent answer to the question, what is your purpose? Because that's a consequence of doing something brilliant. I had the hour, just before we came on, I had the hour in the year that I hate most, which is actually, it was quite fun in the end, but it's sitting down with our financial advisor. It makes my ears bleed usually, but anyway, it was fine. But we were talking about Harley Davidson, and of course Harley Davidson, the purpose of Harley Davidson's, as I'm sure we'll all know, is to unleash the easy rider in every 48-year-old accountant. Anyway, so when we talk about discovering and unearthing and surfacing, it exists in there. You need to use a number of different tools and techniques to get that out and to workshop it and to develop it. And then, of course, once that has been landed and agreed upon and signed off by the business, well, then it's over to to the business to make sure it comes alive. And I have to say, in many years of working, this is not blowing smoke, Tom, but in many years of working with businesses, I have never seen a purpose that's been landed and accepted and welcomed because it's a reflection of the business. I've never seen one activated and put into a business in the way that you've done it. And the latest gong that you scooped in your bleary-eyed way last night with your colleagues to go to with the other 4 from earlier this year is testament to that.
Great. Sam, I'm going to come back to you just to explore this concept of embedding and activating purpose in just a minute. But before I do that, Tom, is there anything, what's coming up for you when you hear Sam talk about discovering purpose? And he talks about, I don't know why I'm flagging this in particular, but cynicism, different interpretations of not what your purpose is, but what purpose even is, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, and as always, very well put by Sam. And absolutely, it really does come down to the language we were using when this project kicked off back in the day. It was all about, just to reiterate what Belinda was saying, unearthing, discovering, and so forth. And what this really came down to was how we can truly, understand what the purpose of Crown is in the most authentic way possible. And the key for us was authenticity. And that's really what's going to resonate with the wider business. That's the most important part. And as with all purpose initiatives, particularly with Crown, we are a global business, and it's we have a very diverse portfolio of clients and employees, and it's incredibly important that that the employees truly, genuinely, authentically adopt and believe in our purpose. And we were very careful with the language from the beginning, discovery, unearthing, but also something that we're not, something coming into our consciousness that we've always been doing. It's just now we're being more mindful and working towards it together. But it's a very, very, very important thing, and for us, and it's been a fantastic journey.
Fantastic. And I'm going to get this wrong now. The Crown Worldwide Group purpose is making it simpler to live, work, and do business anywhere in the world. Am I right?
Absolutely nailed it. That's exactly it. Making it simpler to live, work, and do business anywhere in the world.
Excellent. Thank you. So thinking about embedding or activating, again, really interesting language. I've heard the phrase before is launch. We're launching our purpose. We believe it's already there. So if it is already there, you're not launching it, you're doing something else. So we tend to use this language around embedding or activating purpose. But Sam, what does that language mean to you? And are there any, how do you avoid these dangers of, purpose washing, I feel like?
Yeah, I mean, the point Tom makes about authenticity, this has to be real, is I think one of the reasons why there can be stumbling blocks for many organizations that maybe they haven't sought out enough opinion in enough depth from enough people. I mean, in the case of Crown, not only did we have a kind of cross-functional, I think it was the last one it wasn't the last bit of training, well, it was the last workshop, but it was one of the last kind of pre-pandemic workshops, and we had a truly stellar cast join us in a hotel near Heathrow, didn't we? I mean, from around the world. I think maybe more than 20 of us representing different functions, different parts of the business. The cross-functionality, I think, is really important, but also depth. So as well as in the preparation, analysing the linguistic ticks and tells and trays of Crown in all of the internal, external facing publications, online, offline, as well as doing that, as well as getting more than 100, I mean, I was really impressed, more than 100 leaders from across different bits of the business, as well as doing in-depth one-on-one interviews with the board, or members of the board. It wasn't just kind of broad and shallow, it was kind of broad and deep. I mean, I know you're an organization of several thousand people. Is it 4,500 people, something like that, from memory? We didn't speak to everybody. We weren't able to, it would be kind of too confusing, but we were really able to go kind of broad and deep. And I think that's one of the keys. I mean, one of the keys, your key word there, Tom, of authenticity, one of the reasons that the expression of making it simpler for everyone to live, work and do business anywhere in the world, one of the reasons that resonates is because it's true to what the business does. And you have very diverse business operations, from archiving and storing data and moving people and art and wine, or lots and lots of different things. But actually, there can be a danger, bless you, there can be a danger, particularly with a diversified business, a business that's grown organically and by acquisition and different things. There can be a danger, and one of the reasons that I think purpose statements can be rejected and fail to embed is that they're so bland. They're kind of all things to all people, and therefore they mean nothing to anybody. What I think, by going broad and deep with the Crown ecosystem world, we were able to listen to a real diversity of voices, and in fewer than 20 words, ideally capture something that resonated, that was authentic, and then that allowed it to be properly embedded. That's my feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. I don't know if we've lost B for a moment on.
Oh,
I think a signal may have gone.
Tell me a little bit about the sort of embedded or activate a minute.
Oh, she's there. We've just got a bit of a lag, but we'll work through it. We'll work through it.
We've all been through this before. Let's do it. Come on.
So my question for you is this, which is, what has embedding or activating purpose looked like at Crown? And that's for Tom.
Yeah. So I think where it starts for us, and I think this goes back to what we the challenge that we uncovered and set ourselves from the very beginning is how we communicate purpose. And Belinda, you mentioned the word, we didn't want to have it launched, turn it into, not that there's anything wrong with this, but like an internal marketing campaign that has a certain lifespan. This is something that we truly wanted to activate within our business in a way that's authentic, and has the appropriate buy-in from the right level of leadership all the way through to the people that are facing our customers, and throughout all of our different business units and all the different markets that we operate in. So that idea of how that is activated was incredibly important to us, and it wasn't easy. And so the way that things were activated was we chose an approach of having it being a conversation-led approach. So managers having conversations with their teams, one-to-ones. So it was I think we used the word soft activation. We had some. There's lots of fantastic words from Belinda and Sam, by the way, everyone, as you would know. But it was, and it truly was a genuine, authentic, conversation-led approach. That was then backed up by various other channels and business updates or town halls and so forth, where we encourage not actually saying the word purpose, but actually making it simpler to live, work and do business anywhere in the world, and with regular check-ins and so forth. And then later down the track, embedding the measurement program to see how we're actually tracking and tracing on this, and we'll probably talk about that in a bit more detail a little bit later, Belinda. But yeah, and what this has resulted in is truly something that even I have seen organic. I don't know if the word's manifestations, but
Sounds good.
People activating their purpose in their day-to-day life. Like you go to LinkedIn on some of our employees, and you actually see in their statement, making it simpler to live, work, and do business anywhere in the world. We never said to do that, and for me, it says that this is genuinely, again, we do have data to back this up, but we see evidence out there that it's definitely something that is lived, truly lived, and activated within employees of the business as well. So. Yeah, it's been really great to see, and there's a lot more on the way as well.
Can I just add something there? And you mentioned I call myself a storyteller or a data storyteller. I started life as a classicist, and I'm afraid I'm going to speak. And there are classicists in much more important roles in the United Kingdom and elsewhere who've given classics a bad name. But I'm hoping to bring something back to the classics. So there is this concept. I'm going to give you only 3 Latin words: in medias res, in the middle of things, plunging into the middle of things. Stories are told much better when you plunge in, when the story, and in this case the story of the purpose, is just a natural way of doing it, and you're not, as you say, absolutely as you say, Tom, you're not launching it. So I'll give you one example. Homer, the Odyssey. Odysseus' journey home from the Trojan War. We don't start with the wooden horse having been wheeled. Wooden horse doesn't even appear in Homer. We don't start. Oh, I'm going to leave the war now and sail home, and it's going to take me along. He's being held captive by the witch Calypso, and then you get flashbacks, and then you get dialogue, and then that's my little kind of storytelling classicist. You can take classics out of the boy, but whatever the phrase is. The reason that those stories resonate 3,000 years after first being composed is because they do things in a satisfying storytelling way. And when it comes to corporate storytelling, it's exactly the same. So Tom, your point about didn't want to launch is perfect, is spot on from the storytelling perspective, because if you try and say, here's our purpose, we're launching it today, it's great, bunting banners in buildings, on payslips, wherever it might be, on email signatures, those things can join organically. But if it's just, if it's revealed by dialogue, I love your example, that brilliant example there on the LinkedIn. We didn't ask them to do that. Well, no, because it's authentic, and they want to be part of that visual and oral culture. So I think it's really important not to launch it. Clearly, there needs to be some structure. You want people to stumble across at every available opportunity without ramming it down their throat. The fact that this is an expression that resonates with the business, and you want them to share that, you want it to become a meme, you want it to be shared around the business. But it sounds, if it's appearing on LinkedIn, it's living up to its mimetic potential.
Thank you. I've actually got a question that's come in from Emma in the chat, which I just wanted to go through with you. So, a conversation-led approach does sound great, but we know that this relies on the ability of leaders to have these conversations, which sounds simple enough, but I think we all know it's anything but in reality. So how do you set your leaders up for success to be able to have these conversations?
I love that question, Emma. Thank you very much. And now I think that the conversation-led approach is not something that's easy. Okay, so it's not something that we go, oh yeah, leaders, hi, we need to be a conversation. So there is a lot of work that needs to happen. But I think the number one thing that we had from the very early onset is, the theory of purpose in business. Everyone knows, and I'm yet to be proven, that an authentic purpose that's lived within a business does result in, higher employee morale and better customer and client relationships and so forth, and all around a better, more profitable business at the end of the day. That's the theory, right? But what we never really had, but we got very quickly, was the tangible evidence that can demonstrate that purpose actually does have an impact on the employee experience. And once you and it goes back to what Sam says about cynicism about purpose. Not everyone buys into it, and it's something that you need to be prepared for. You need to have that conversation on different levels. Some managers are more open, some managers are going to be more cynical. And what we came up with was a way to demonstrate tangibly that exposure and evidence of living purpose actually has a positive impact on the employee experience overall. So it's not just something that is a suggestion, have the conversational approach. It's something that, every manager wants to have motivated employees, I would imagine. If they don't, then there's probably a conversation that needs to be had with that manager. But it really comes down to that, demonstrating through conversation, showing the evidence that it actually does work, and then that continues it, and then that moves into further embedding of purpose within the business.
Thanks, Tom. It is a great question. Let's loop back a little bit, and I'll ask you to explain a bit about the evaluation process. And I know we've got some more questions coming in as well, so then we'll come to those in a bit. So tell us a little bit. I mean, working with you on the lead on this program was such a gift in terms of our ability to actually be able to, for the first time, and this is what the internal competence engagement awards people are saying, this is it's not me saying it's groundbreaking stuff, it's them saying this is groundbreaking stuff, nobody does this yet. So tell us a little bit about that evaluation approach and how that came about.
Yeah, absolutely. And working together actually was a gift. I just want to reiterate that. So so it goes back to the it always goes back to it goes back to the very beginning of this. And a lot of you would know the change curve within a business, change management, and all documented everywhere. Belinda and Sam had it in the original proposal, but really the change curve in business, like, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time from a general awareness through to sort of understanding, and then moving on to embedding later down the track. And we were very much true to that all the way through this. Again, going back to authenticity, we know that this is not going to happen overnight. We didn't want to go out and have conversations with our leaders and other parts of the business to help activate purpose by telling us, once you read the statement, everything's all going to suddenly join together. So it was really about acknowledging that there are going to be steps, there are going to be stages. It is going to take time, and again, in theory, that sounds fantastic, but having this, being led, through the work that I do as head of insight for Crown Worldwide Group, and have a background in data, market research, and so forth. It's just like, right, well, this needs to be, again, tangible. Like, this needs to be measured. How are we going to know when things are living and activated fully? How do we know when to change? What actions do we need to take to get there? How do we move people along that change curve? And that was really the basis of the evaluation program. How can we create an evaluation program with the data assets that we have at our availability to make sure that we can track and monitor the progress and the change and the impact that purpose is having across our business, as well as our customers and clients. And yeah, and that formed the basis of the methodology. And I don't think that a methodology like that is like every business can. It is actually a very unique experience being in my position within Crown, because we do have some of the best data assets that I've actually seen. We're a service-led company. Our service is everything. So we obviously have customer satisfaction data that's tracked ongoing across all of our various different business units. But we also have a very strong HR team that's led by Magali. Hi, Magali, if you're listening. Whose number one thing is employee feedback. The employee experience is incredibly important. And so having that relationship between the customer and the employee, and bringing in a measurement program that literally measures everything that's coming in and links it all together to assess the impact it has, really does help turn those cynics around.
That's yeah, really interesting. So I think, sort of reflecting back to Emma's question about how do you make conversational leadership or a conversational approach real? So it's half motivation, isn't it? Your managers, your leaders have got to be motivated to want to do it, and it's half skill and support and enablement. It's probably that half and half is probably wrong. It's probably 90% motivation, inspiration. And what I thought was really interesting when you started working on this is that when you started sharing data and you could cut it by location or business unit, suddenly more leaders got involved and more interested, because they could see almost the scores on the doors and they wanted a slice of it. So the motivation came later. So there was quite an an organic adoption of it from that leadership management level, which helped to drive it down the business. So I think that, yeah, the use of data, not just to prove its value, but also to incentivize more people to get involved and to want to have those conversations. Simon, what's coming up for you that we've not talked about?
So that I just want to say that I think that there's let's have another flashback, building a good story through flashback, right? I think that when I talked about the breadth and the depth of those that you I would say allowed and indeed required us to speak to. I think one of the reasons, and I don't have your metrication is much more significant, is much more sophisticated than my hunch here, but my hunch is that because the board, the senior leadership team, a cross-functional group, but also many, many more than that, were actively involved, had their opinions sought, listened to, and reflected in the purpose playbook and so on, the final manifest, or the final kind of drawing together manifestation that you then use as the fuel to take it even further. Because they had been listened to, therefore it feels much more like an inclusive process, and that you've involved them along the way. And when it comes back to them and they recognize it and they think, oh, there's an expression for my bit of the business or for what we do in this function, then they're very much more likely to use it. What I think is spectacularly impressive is that what you've not been able to depend upon is water cooler moments. I don't reckon there have been anywhere. I mean, I know you've carried on doing all of the amazing things that you do, but there will not have been, by virtue of one thing and another in the last 18 months, there will not have been the opportunity for those spontaneous, accidental, oh, have you seen about this? Or I heard, so you've stripped that away. And yet, because you took this rigorous approach, one in the data in, so it's not garbage in, garbage out, it's quality in and therefore quality out. But then had this very sophisticated, straightforward, but very sophisticated way of measuring impact and tying the impact of the cascade of the rollout and the way that it's lived in the business. They're very sophisticated and straightforward. It's great that you have that kind of paradox embedded there, way of measuring it. It means that you can see where it's working, where it's not, and but to do that under the conditions of a pandemic, even more impressive.
Tom.
Cheers. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, absolutely, and it's I guess it's one of those things, and it actually is, really, it's actually true to our purpose. It's actually what we do. We are making it simpler to live, work, and do business anywhere, and that's embodying itself through, adapting and continuing to evolve through, the things that have happened over the last 18 months. I like it how we're avoiding saying it, but it's definitely something that we're particularly proud of. But the best thing is that it's something that has embedded itself in our organization, and it's continued to be listened to and acted upon. So yeah, it's very exciting.
I'm not being gratuitously euphemistic. The Radio 5, BBC Radio 5 live in the UK, their film reviewers and podcasters, Simon Mayo and Mark Kermode, they don't talk about the pandemic. They always talk about what with one thing and another. And I think poking one in the eye of COVID and calling it one thing and another is quite decent. But no, it's genuinely impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Really good.
I love that expression. Thank you, Simon. So much better than these unprecedented times, which I think we're all sick of by about April last year. That's 18 months on. Jane, I think we started to Jane has put a question or a comment in the chat about the difficulty of making purpose real across multiple, I'm going to mangle it, sort of multiple business units and leaders with different priorities and so on. And we've touched on it at one end in kind of like the data, use of data to inspire and demonstrate the impact that it has on employee experience, employee engagement and customer experience, which is an organization like Crown, which is what it's all about. There was something else that I just wondered if it's worth reflecting on briefly. Maybe it's quite a tactical thing, but it feels significant to me. And this is to Sam. I know that obviously Crown is a business with multiple business units doing everything from moving fine art and storing wine to massive data storage and many other things in between. And Sam, you needed to come up with, we needed to express, if you like, so you unearth and then you express or articulate purpose. And you need to do that. It's flexible, right? Because there were different manifestations of this to help different business units engage with it. Can you explain a little bit about what that looks like, you know, flexibility within a framework or whatever it may be? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think if you look at the core expression, kind of live, work, and do business, kind of expresses what people, I guess, before the age of retirement and even after do. So the making it simpler aspect or element is absolutely central to that. But I mean, if we think about, and I'll be specific just to demonstrate the flexibility. If we think about the relocations, moving people and families and possessions and the rest of it. So if we're saying it's making it simpler for everyone to live, work, and do business anywhere in the world, then for relocations, we're talking about making it simpler for you to move your family, your possessions, and even your pets to more than 150 countries worldwide. If you're thinking about another element, if you're thinking about records management, making it simpler for you to integrate physical and electronic assets, making them more available, and understand how information flows through the business. I won't go through every one of your 6 or 7 divisions, but I think the simple, the word simple, I was really interested when we'd done the absorption and the analysis and the workshopping and so on and so on. I was interested to know how the simpler would go down for a good reason, that there are some people who think that simplicity is a dirty word. And it's about dumbing down, and it's about being too vanilla. What I was delighted about was that across the business, the sense of simplification, that doing something professionally because you know how to do it, and what visas are required, and what happens with pets, and how not to break pottery. I mean, all of the millions of things that go to make up each of the different business units. Not only is simplification not a dirty word, it's a beating, as I appreciate it from the outside, at least, and when working with Tom and colleagues, it's a beating heart principle of the business, and it's in terms of customer experience. If you're moving halfway around the world, or even just not halfway around, a tiny bit around the world, if you're entrusting a third party to ensure that your data is managed in a new and more elegant way, then the simplification bit is not only not a dirty word, that's what you're after as a customer. You want it to be safe and secure and the rest of it, but you just want the headache to be taken away. And because that is a beating heart principle of the way the business has grown organically and by acquisition and the rest of it, then I think it's quite straightforward to have this higher level thought about simplification, and then how it manifests itself in very, very different businesses that require very, very different skills and expertises. But I think that there's a core thought that is then manifested in many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely, super important. And I think that just to build on that, the way that we speak about it internally, because it's always a question as well. It's just like, make it simple to work and do business anywhere in the world, but what does it mean for my business unit? Like, so again, Crown, we're multiple business units. We talk about our core 5, and we have up to 7. We may have 8. There may be more, but everyone wants to know. And I think again, it comes down to the language. It's how we express purpose, and the expressions of purpose are what brings it together to that core fundamental purpose throughout the business units. And it's the thing that weaves the common thread that ties all of our business units together, which is a really, really important thing for Crown and our business. And again, this goes back to the brief. How do we link all of our very diverse and different business units together under one unifying purpose. And yeah, it's a big part of that.
So another question in the chat, and Tom, I'm going to put you on the spot for this. So this is Emma's looking for more detail on the evaluation approach. So can you explain what you measured and the approach that you took? So I know that obviously the measurement looked at engagement and experience, and also customer experience, and correlated those two. Is it possible to, there's a lot of cleverness in here. Can you give us a simple explanation of what you measured in the approach?
You're asking me to be clever the day after an award ceremony. Thank you. Thanks, Emma. I'll give you loads of detail, actually. But put simply, so basically, the two ways that we, two key data assets that we use. We use our data from our customers and clients through customer satisfaction, and we use our internal employee experience data. And then the third part, this is where the magic happens, is we anonymously link the two together through and understand who is along that, from the employee perspective, how employees are tracking along that change curve. Are they learning purpose through to living purpose? And so we have a way to identify that that has been crafted through a series of questions. A bit of direct and indirect analysis technique is used to understand who is living versus learning purpose. And then we also measure from a customer and client perspective. We've developed what we call the Net Simpler score, as well as we track NPS as well, and other customer experience metrics along with that. But the Net Simpler score is unique to our business. It's a scale that taps into is the experience working with Crown for you as a customer or client of ours, simpler versus more complex, basically. And so we use that data coupled with employee experience data, link them together, test those who are living versus learning, and anonymously we can link to see what their customer experience is like of those who are exposed or living versus learning, and we can assess the impact on that. I'm going to pause there just in case. Is that enough detail, Emma? I can go into a little bit more if you like.
We'll watch the chat and see if she comes back with more. All good, thanks. Great job. Sam, what do you think other organisations could learn from this use of data insight and storytelling that we're talking about at Crown?
Quite a good question. They should do exactly the same as Crown, because Crown have done it better than anybody I've ever seen it do before. They should realise that. I think they should realise that in order to do this right, you need to give it some attention. You need to give it some time. This is not something that can be. This is not something that you can knock up in 20 minutes by talking to the chief exec and the chair. So it demands time. It demands work, but it doesn't just demand time and work in the surfacing and articulation stage. It really demands work in the making it live throughout the business stage. But I think the Net Simpler score is just brilliant, and it's not that every single statement of purpose is going to have something that could be hybridized. I think what you looked at was to find, as I understand it, you looked at what is the single most important unifying element, and it is this about simplification. Okay. So how can we measure that within our business? Oh, we can measure it within our business, and we will measure it, and we'll do it, and when you were talking before about the kind of cutting by business unit or by market, let's think of an automobile company. Let's say that a big automobile company that has multiple models in multiple markets with different customer segments. Possibly even more, more on the one hand simpler than Crown on one level, on the other hand much more complicated because it has so many different both markets and customer profiles and affordability indices and all of these things. But you could easily I'm not saying simplification would be the measure at all, but whatever it was that was settled upon, you could easily find a way to look at it by market and segment, and then you could, you'll have, you could say, how is the SUV division doing relative to the sports hatch division, and is that different in? I know car market is difficult at the moment because of lack of chips, but how's it doing on its ability to make people feel that the company takes the environment seriously? It doesn't matter what the issue is, but the fundamental thing, I think, is take it seriously, invest time, get buy-in from the top, which can require, as you will, not only recall, Tom, we were in the trenches together here. It can require multiple selling, right? A central team, a central function can have an idea that this is a good idea, but then you can find a partner who you think is going to help you, make it work well, but then it requires repeated advocacy during the process, and that can make some people give up, or it can make some people say, oh, well, we won't involve them. We never did that. We kind of not kind of fought and said, you've got to listen, this is so important, it's really important, but actually, look, this is why we're doing it, this is what we believe it can do. And then again, that process of selling and upselling, cross-selling into different bits of the business, different functions, that gives those people, those leaders, those team members, some skin in the game, and it makes it, once you've got there, that much easier that much more straightforward to then embed it into the business. And as I say, if every business that develops a purpose could come up with a metric as resonant and self-explanatory as the Net Simpler score, then life would be a lot easier. But take it seriously and do some hard work.
Yeah, really well said, Sam. And to also extend from that, like thinking about other businesses, I think, throughout my career, thinking about how insight roles are generally perceived in the business, it's really much always focused on customers, clients, markets, prospects, and so forth. But very rarely, I haven't seen it. Maybe it does exist. I'm sure it does. Let me know in the chat, or email me, or text me on LinkedIn, or let us know. But it's very rare that an insight function works very closely with HR. Usually there might be HR insight teams, or there might be customer and client insight, market insight, but very rarely do they connect. I haven't seen it yet, but in Crown, it's a very unique piece. And we know that the employee experience is equal to the customer experience, not only in theory, but tangibly, we actually have evidence now of that from happening. So it's incredibly important to have to acknowledge that there are those working assets within the business in terms of data assets, and use them and mine them, and really extract that tangible meaning from them. So sorry, go on.
As you say, absolutely. Yep. The HR insights piece is growing. It's it's not caught up with customer experience insights bit, but these usually sit in two entirely different parts of the business and rarely talk to each other. So bringing insight as one thing together to think about customers, and we're all 100%. People at the end of the day, and one impacts the other, I think is a stroke of genius. So great stuff. So one last quick question for you, Tom. Congrats again on the awards. What next for Crown and Purpose? What's happening next?
That's really, really good. So the journey is never, ever, ever going to be over. It is ongoing. A few things have been spoken about on the call today. About we've been talking about change curves and various things. It is ongoing. We haven't reached it yet. Not everyone in the company is living purpose. That's really ultimately our goal. So we're going to continue to measure, continue to demonstrate ROI, which is really what the measurement program is all about. So we can have those leader-led conversations and continue that. There's a series of initiatives, both from a marketing perspective, also from an internal HR perspective, where we're beginning to begin to filter through training and development and so forth as well, and really be part of that fabric and the language of Crown Worldwide Group and all of its associated business units. So it's just really onwards and upwards, and continuing making it simpler to live, work, and do business anywhere in the world.
Fantastic. I love how often you manage to trip it off your tongue, and I know that you are doing that all the time in the business as well. So I'll hand back to Katie to close us off properly, but from me, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. It's been great exploring, and I know there's loads more to come from Crown Worldwide on this, but from me, Tom and Sam, thank you so much, and thanks for sharing all of this with us today. Katie.
Thanks, Bea. Yes, thank you, Sam. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate you joining us today. Really fascinating, and lots of things that hopefully our listeners will be able to pick up on and learn from going forwards. So as mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to start doing things slightly differently from here on in. So if there are guests that you would like to see come up on the Reset Show in the future, please do send us in your thoughts, suggestions, ideas. You can email us info@peoplelab.co.uk, and we will do our best to track them down and get them on a future show. Make sure, if you haven't already signed up, that you do go onto our website, get yourself registered as someone who is subscribing to the Reset Show, and then we'll send you all of the recordings after the show, links to the podcast, and we do also treat our subscribers with extra reading and resources and other little bits and pieces that you may have heard talked about as part of the show itself as well. If you haven't discovered us on YouTube, you can watch all of our old shows. Please make sure you give us a like and subscribe. Similarly, we've got a podcast which you can find on any of your favourite platforms, from iTunes through to, I'll say it quietly so it doesn't set off my one in the kitchen, but Alexa. So you can find us on all of the different podcast channels as well. So please make sure you do like, subscribe, so other people can find us and enjoy some great conversations like the ones we've had today. That's pretty much it, I think, for now. But yes, thank you again to Sam and Tom, and obviously Belinda for hosting the show. And lots of love to our Emma. I hope she feels better soon, ready for the next show when that will come round. So that's it.
That's fun. Thank you for having me. Great to see you all.
Thank you.
Sam, Katie. See you guys.